Okay, so this is my fifth video regarding the Karen Read murder trial. I know there are a lot of other creators who are able to come on here and give you daily updates of what's happening in the courtroom. And I gotta be honest, I'm a latecomer to this and I'm still catching up on all the bullshit that happened before it even made it to court. There is so much, what the fuck? This is crazy. My entire video today is going to be about police incompetence, because there's a heaping dose of that in this case. If I'm being honest, I will say I think I'm a very fair person, and I understand that in big investigations, there's always a tale of some cop who screwed something up, right? And might be evidence that goes missing. There might be a witness that somebody forgot to talk to, something. And a lot of times those are considered errors. I do not think that's the case here. I think this is complete weaponized incompetence, or dare I say dereliction of duty, because Woody from Toy Story has better law enforcement chops than some of these guys, and he's a fucking toy. So let's start with the first guys on the scene. So take you back to about 6 a.m. the morning that John O'Keefe's body is found on the lawn. The three women find him, and they call 911, and a couple of Canton PD officers arrive. So at the scene is Officer Seraph and then a Sergeant Lank. So, and I'm sure there's others, but these are the two main dudes. Now, these guys are a little unorthodox, right? So at first they're using a leaf blower to clear the snow away from the body and look for evidence. They're also collecting blood evidence using red Solo cups. And the sad part is that they seem really impressed with their inventiveness. Let's start with Officer Seraph. On April 14th of 2022, he goes before the grand jury, and he gives testimony that when he was speaking with Karen, when he was taking her statement, she sort of was standing over the body and she sort of questioned, is this my fault? Like, I can't believe this has happened. Almost like she was giving him the indication that she thinks she may have done something. She's asking, is this my fault? That's what he says to the grand jury. But then his story changes slightly, but he gets to trial. So I have seen a snippet of his testimony. He is a witness for the prosecution, and what he says on the stand is that Karen was actually much more determinate in her statement, that she said, quote, "It's my fault. I can't believe this happened. It's my fault." Now, the interesting thing, and Alan Jackson got him on this on the stand, is that this was never in his original statement. That morning when he arrived and he took the witness statements, he never said that Karen said any of this. It was never written down in his statement. And when they passed all the evidence along to the state police, because at some point Canton PD backs out and the state police come in, Proctor takes over. He never mentions this to Proctor. If there is a cop that has been wounded or killed, we know how much they rally around each other. So if you arrive at the scene, you see a woman standing over the body and she's saying, "It's my fault." Doesn't some part of you think, did she just confess to this dead body laying here? Some part of you, wouldn't you think, I should probably be reading her rights and putting her in the back of the car and taking her into the station for questioning? He doesn't even write it down. It's such a phenomenal, earth-shattering admission that he doesn't even write it down because it never happened. In fact, in court, they play his body camera of that morning, and the actual interaction with he and Karen, it shows on his tape. Karen saying, quote, "I left him here and he never came home." Big difference. Now let's talk a second about Officer Lank, because there's two things that are important about him. When he was talking to Proctor about what he found at the scene and the things that he heard, what he says is in his report to Proctor, he describes O'Keefe's injuries as having trauma to his head and says, quote, "I'm not sure if he's been in a fight or whatever." That was Lank's assessment of O'Keefe's injuries when he first came to the scene. Now, they took Jennifer McCabe's statement on the lawn, but then Jennifer McCabe is allowed to walk away and go into the Alberts' house. Remember, I talked about that in another video where she went in there to wake them up because for some reason they're not out on the lawn like they should be. So Jen McCabe goes in the house and she stays in the house. They never go in the house to look around. They never talk to anybody in the house. They don't tape it off as a crime scene. They don't do anything to the house. Lank and Seraph and all the Canton PD fellas leave, and Proctor and the Stadies come in. Now, what's interesting is Lank had left the scene, but at 9 a.m., Jen McCabe calls him and says, "Can you come back? I think I forgot to tell you something from this morning." So now that she's been in the house with Brian Albert and Nicole Albert, and by the way, Julie Albert showed up as well at 8:30 to drop off a birthday present for Brian Jr. So the whole family is inside allegedly getting in cahoots with each other, she calls Lank back. And suddenly she remembers that Karen Read was sort of, I don't know, sort of confessing to it, saying, oh, I hope I didn't hit him. I hope this isn't my fault. At no time during that entire morning investigation do any of them go in the house or go around back or look anyplace else. In fact, that house, I said earlier, had 12 windows and 2 doors that faced the crime scene. And they never thought for a second that somebody on the inside would have seen what was going on the outside. Now let's talk about our boy Higgins. And I had asked the question, was he drinking that night? And everyone came into my comments and they're like, yep, our boy likes whiskey. So he was intoxicated when he left the party at 1:30 and he drove to the Canton Police Department where he has an office. He's an ATF officer, but he has an office here in Canton. So he's drinking and driving. He drives his own vehicle. He says he's got to go in and move some other vehicles around because of snow plows or something like that. I don't know if he was moving other vehicles he owned or if he was getting in and moving actual government vehicles. But anyway, this is a guy that never should have been behind the wheel of a car if he's been drinking. Also, he shouldn't have access to state property. So he shouldn't be on police computers at 1:30 in the morning when he's been drinking. But even after he did all of that, he was on the phone with Brian Albert at 2:23 in the morning. So Albert calls him first, claims it's a butt dial. Higgins answers. It's 1 second long. They both hang up. Then Higgins calls Albert back. It's a 22-second call. If you want my opinion, Albert calls Higgins and Higgins is probably like, hold on, I'll call you right back, because he's probably someplace where he can't talk. Then he goes into another room or another place and he calls Albert back. And that call lasts for 22 seconds. Again, a little bit more, let's get our shit together. It was 5 minutes after that call that Jen McCabe famously does her Google search. And remember, it was Brian Higgins who used the help of an FBI friend and some software to extract text messages off of his own phone. They were the text messages that he'd exchanged with Karen Read, these flirty texts. Of all the texts he'd sent and all the time he owned that phone, he only pulled off the ones with Karen Read and handed those over to Proctor. All of the texts with Brian Alpert, Nicole Alpert, Jim, anybody else that he'd text with in the entire time he owned that phone got thrown away on the military base. Now, Alan Jackson is worth every penny, but I'm petty AF. And if I had this dumb ape on the stand, I would be going on and on and on about A, showing up for work drunk, but B, why you throwing your trash at the military base? Do you not have trash service at your house? I would have gone on and on and on. What model was your phone that you threw away? What model was it that replaced it? How old was it? How many times do you go to the military base? How often do you throw your trash away? I'd have fucking buried this guy just for fun. Just for fun. It might not have advanced my case, but this is the type of punk that I'd want to kick the shit out of on the stand. There are so many other missing pieces of different Ring cameras that they could have subpoenaed, all sorts of different videos. Amazing how all of the taillight evidence was never found that morning when they had the leaf blower out there and an entire troop of people walking around, but it was found that evening at 5 o'clock. And when it's almost dark out, suddenly someone finds 30 plus pieces of taillight in the snow. After 2 rounds, both the Canton PD couldn't find anything and the state police couldn't find anything. Suddenly these other guys from the state office come in at 5 o'clock and they find something. Weird. Anyway, I've run out of time, but I do want to still talk about Michael Proctor. He's going to have to be my next video. And every day, I dig in just a tiny bit and you just pull the smallest thread and the whole fucking thing comes apart. And I'm going to keep going because I'm now fascinated. Hope you will keep tuning in.